Well, welcome back to the In Good Company podcast, where we believe that the best parts in business happen in good company. And today's guest is a great friend. He is so good at the things that I'm not good at, which doesn't just make him a good friend, but a great partner as I'm growing my business and he's continuing to expand his. It's incredible to just get to know him a little bit more. And I'm excited for you guys to get to know him as well. So without further ado, just want to welcome to the podcast, Zach Harrington. Good to see you, brother.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you too.
Honored to have you. Tell us a little bit about, for those that maybe don't know a little bit of your story, just talk a little bit about where'd you grow up? Mm-hmm. What do you do for work? Would love to kind of hear your journey.
Yeah, let's do
bit.
it. So I'm Rochester born and raised. So I grew up in the town of Greece, did my entire schooling there, went to Alfred University for college.
Nice.
Graduated from Alfred, started my career at a firm here in Rochester, and have never been anywhere else. It's just a place that I love, and my family lives here, my siblings live here, and that's what's most important to me. And my wife and I live in the town of Greece now. My wife and I actually met at the end of middle school. We've been together 14 years at this point by her choice. If it was by my choice, it'd probably be closer to 18.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. Like, it's one of those things where I knew that she was the one the moment I met her. She took a little bit more convincing. And we got there. So we live in the town of Greece. We have two beautiful daughters, Isla and Ray. Isla is every bit of the terrible twos right now. Like, there's no doubt about it. And Ray will be there soon enough. She's 8 months, but I'm just enjoying every second of her before she starts talking and terrorizing my house as well. So that's a little bit about me and my personal life. Work-wise, so I have been in financial services my entire career. Right now, I own a firm called Rise Advisors with two other partners. We are an investment management and financial planning firm based out of Linden Oaks. We started that firm in 2020, and it's been an awesome journey. We've been able to grow rapidly, expand our employee base, and we're actually seeing one of our partners through to retirement here at the end of September, which has been very exciting and just really cool to get him across that finish line. Was kind of what we set out to do when we started Rise. So it's been an awesome journey so far.
Yeah. And what has it been like, the transition between kind of working for a firm and then now being in a place where you're one of the primary partners of that firm? What has that transition been like, I guess, from being an employee to being really the guy in charge?
Yeah. And, right now, I think the coolest thing is like within my partnership structure right now, like, each of us are in charge of our own things. And I think that part's really cool. And so my partner, Stephanie, is just so amazing at anything operationally, which is not one of my strong suits. And my partner, Mark, is really great at like the business development side and building relationships. And so we're all super complementary to each other. And it's one of those things, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. Like, yeah. I think back to like, even like when I was younger, like in high school, we did this fundraiser one time for a kid who was going through cancer treatment. So we sold these t-shirts, and the passion that I get when I have these opportunities to be entrepreneurial and, sell a product and grow it and scale it is something that I just absolutely love. And my college roommates and I had this pretty illegal business where we sold hard lemonade that we made out of our suite in college. And
wow.
But it started off as, just a couple of jars of lemonade, and we expanded it to a pretty large thing for a few months.
Wow.
And so I just love that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think it's really hard being an employee sometimes to be able to show that to people.
Sure.
And so I don't know if I'm somebody who could ever be an employee of somebody's again, but I just love nothing more than knowing, like, when I get up in the morning, whatever happens today is because of the effort that I put in. It's not because of how a boss feels or somebody's attitude coming into the office. So it's different, but it's the greatest thing on earth. I just, that entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know how I got blessed with it, but I did, and I love it.
The adult lemonade stand in college. Are you willing to?
We were 21 for the record.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Are you willing to divulge the recipe at all, or is that something that they gotta?
Yeah, so there was a YouTube video that we found, and it was literally Everclear vodka, water, lemon juice, and sugar. So basically, it was lemonade with Everclear vodka, and we had a pretty sizable margin on what those jars were going for.
What was it called? What was the biz called?
So it was called Uncle Shinebox's Hard Lemonade. And I forget how we got to the name, but it was just something that like we started doing on like a random Tuesday night, and it scaled really quickly. And I just think that's something I love. I love nothing more than, same thing with clients. Like, getting involved with a business and seeing it being able to grow and scale effectively and the impact that it has on the owners and the employees and the community, like that's what it's all about.
I didn't anticipate that we'd be talking about hard lemonade on this podcast, but it's a great start. It's cool. An absolute great start. For those people that maybe are listening that they have that same entrepreneurial spirit that you're talking about, but they feel a little bit stuck in their current job. I think COVID kind of pulled the curtain back a little bit where people started to go, wait a minute, maybe I can build something around my life, or maybe I can figure out a job that, a lot of businesses started in 2020, right? There were a lot of those kind of, hey, if there's never been a better time, let me make this jump. What advice would you have to someone that has that entrepreneurial spirit, but they do feel stuck right now? What advice might you have?
So one of my first ever bosses was this guy, Ken Burke. So Ken Burke owns a firm called High Falls Advisors, where I started my career. And he was one of the first people who introduced me to this guy out of Toronto, Canada, called Dan Sullivan, who's a strategic coach. And one of the things he always talked about was how there's no scarier feeling than when you make that decision to go out on your own, but there's no better feeling than doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so what I think is really important for people to remember is like, you can always go back. Like the amount of times I have conversations with people where they're in a job where they feel stuck and, they're making decent money, they're comfortable, but they want to take this chance. The odds are if you fail in taking the chance, you can always go back to where you were. I think like people feel like they have to completely restart and reinvent themselves if they don't succeed. But a lot of it just comes down to like, you can always go back to where you were.
Yeah.
But there is no more fulfilling thing. Like you're a small business owner yourself. Like when you wake up in the morning and whatever that day brings, and no 2 days are the same, but whatever happens that day is because of the effort of you and your team and the rewards it has for your family and the rewards it has for your staff. Like that's what makes it worthwhile. And so I think part of it is just taking the chance. Like, don't be afraid to fail. Cause like, it doesn't mean you're going back to zero. It just means you go back to where you were, and that's okay too. You took a chance.
It's awesome. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of view this big bridge in the mountains with, right, all of the, the height difference there where they're going to fall in the Grand Canyon and now their whole story is ruined. And when I think about the entrepreneurial experience, it's really a dock from one side of the water to the other.
Sure.
And as you're walking or running across that dock, if something bumps you off, you can get right back on that same spot and keep your journey moving.
Absolutely.
And I think for so many people, there's that fear of the unknown, or they're just not sure, what if? And I think the better what if question would be, what if it worked?
Yeah. And so a couple things with that. So I went independent, meaning no longer being an employee and working for myself, about 8 years ago now. And my wife and I had just gotten married, and a guy who I worked with at High Falls had already made the transition to being independent. And he reached out to me, and his name's Mike Ross. And he said, hey man, I think we have this opportunity for you to come and be independent with us. And I think that you would be great at it. And at the time, it was like 6 weeks before our wedding. And I was like, listen, I can't make this decision right now. If you guys go with somebody else, I completely understand. But if the fall comes around and I'm through the wedding and the opportunity is still available, like I'd be certainly interested in having the conversation. And so sure enough, they'd offered the role to somebody else. He thought it was too risky. And so he ended up not taking it. And so I remember having one interview, and I went back home and I looked at my wife, and we were 25 at the time. And I looked at her and I go, I know what I'm capable of in this business.
Yeah.
And I know that if I keep doing what I'm doing, we'll have a good life. But if I take this chance and I keep doing what I'm doing, I think we'll have a great life. And my fear was if I didn't take that chance then, and I waited 5 years until I was more comfortable or more safe or whatever it was, that I was never going to do it. Because taking that chance when you have a young family or you have a big mortgage or all these things is really hard to do. And I look back on it now, like 7 or 8 years later, and it was the best decision I ever made. And like the freedom and flexibility and the financial freedom that we have because of that decision has really paid off. But it took my wife believing in me. It took me believing in myself. And I even joked with her. I was like, if I fail at this, I'll just go sell cars. Like I was raised by car salesmen.
Sure.
My mom has been on every Bob Johnson's commercial since 1997. Like born
Shout
and raised
out,
in the car business. And I just knew like I could go do that and be just fine.
Yeah.
And so we took the chance and haven't looked back, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, again, thinking about maybe the entrepreneur, the person who's just started their family, or they had this big dream as a single person, but then a spouse came in and a couple of kids got sprinkled in, and now they find themselves just kind of going through the motions at work instead of really living out their greatest life purpose. What advice might you have for someone, or what have you experienced in your own family dynamic of really trying to balance pursuing your dream, pursuing your passion, but also, including your family in that dream as well?
Yeah. So these are conversations my wife and I have all the time of, we're fortunate and blessed in the success we've had, but are we chasing this marginal dollar right now in exchange for time that we will never get back with our kids? It's this constant thing we debate of, how do we have more freedom of time in exchange for that freedom of money? And I think that's what the equation comes down to, right? Like before we had kids, like our focus was always on that kind of marginal dollar and financial security. And you have a family and you realize none of that matters. Like you reach a point of comfort, and I know it might come across as like tone deaf of course money matters up to a certain extent, but when you have a comfortable life, like sometimes you just start to reset the priority. And part of it is the culture we've created at Rise. Like
Sure.
Our staff has the flexibility of if they need to go take a kid off the bus or they need to go to a doctor's appointment. Like we have Fridays off from Memorial Day to Labor Day to provide that flexibility when it comes to going and enjoying a long weekend with your family or taking your kid to the zoo on a Friday. Like,
yeah.
I think those things are really important in being present. Like I never want to have to make the decision of work versus being able to volunteer in my kid's classroom or work or being able to coach one of my kids' sports. And I think the cool thing is that once again, the culture we've created allows us to, like, our clients buy into that.
Yeah.
Like the amount of times, like I've had a sick kid and I have to call a client and they're like, just take care of it. That's more important. Like part of it is surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah.
When it comes to who you work with or who you work for. But yeah, like my priorities over these last 3 or 4 years after becoming a dad have just such completely changed of how do I get myself more freedom of time? And there's a fine line because you owe it to your business partners and you owe it to your clients and you owe it to your staff. But at the end, like nobody cares about how much money you have left over. It's what you were able to do, as a husband and as a father and as a man. So I think that's the most important part is finding that balance.
I've shared this story before, but obviously during 2020, there was a tremendous amount of Zoom calls and, everybody's kind of in their living room or their, third bedroom or fourth bedroom, whatever it is. And, there's been many moments where I'm on a sales call or a client meeting and I get so overwhelmed because my son is just banging on the door. My daughter's trying to go down for a nap. My wife can't do anything about my crazy 5-year-old. But in those moments that I actually bring him in, sit him on my lap, and just listen, nod, talk.
It's a great icebreaker. Like you're human, man. Like and it's the reality of it.
And that's the deal is like the greatest sales pitch you could ever make is being human.
Of course.
And it doesn't mean, that you gotta, be rushing out of the shower and you're like, oh, sorry, I'm late. It's not those elements, but it's,
no, you can still be professional and be a human.
There
right?
you go. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty, especially in something that's maybe, so difficult to fully wrap your head around with some of the work that you guys do is a lot of what you do is very complicated. And there's a lot of trust that someone has to put in you guys to be able to execute and deliver on some of the things that you say. And yet, if you can show yourself as human, that's one of the greatest ways to build trust. What would you say in your current role has been some of those ways that you guys have been able to be this preferred partner, this trusted partner for people? How have you guys over the years been able to really develop some trust for your clients?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is having a process and having the process be consistent. So I feel like a lot of times in financial services, advisors are just trying to gather assets. And so they may not be consistent in what their process is because they're just trying to make a sale. And for us, it doesn't matter who you are as a client. Like 99% of our clients start off with a financial plan.
Yeah.
And so it's basically this like just flat fee of like, we're going to take the time over these next 4, 5, 6 meetings, whatever it is, to just figure out what the problems are and solve them.
Yeah.
And if over those 4, 5, or 6 meetings, you feel that we are a good fit and vice versa, like we can figure out what it looks like moving forward. But it always comes from a point of providing value on the front end. And then people recognize that we are more than just trying to provide a transaction. And the coordination, the amount of times that like we meet with somebody and they've never had a sit down with their advisor and their attorney or their advisor and their CPA to try and understand how it all interacts with each other.
Right.
And they also don't have the time to do it. And so I think just taking the time to be able to uncover the problems and provide solutions is how we build that.
Yeah.
And also just being human. Like we have a set of core values that we try and live and preach, and it's being approachable and relatable and generous and creative and imaginative, but also like incredibly professional and knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the brand we've created and continue to show to people is I can sit down and we can laugh and carry on about absolute nonsense. But when we need to get down to business, we're going to figure out what the problems are and we're going to solve them. And the most important part is delivering on it.
Yeah.
A lot of people provide lip service, but at the end of the day, like if you don't have a process that you're delivering on, people aren't going to buy into it. And I think that's part of why we've effectively tripled in size in 4 years is because we deliver on what we say we're going to do.
Yeah. There's also a rumor going around that you guys provide Alfred hard lemonade at every single one of your meetings.
That's part of the process.
I'm just kidding. You're like, I don't know why people keep signing with us.
Yeah, they love it.
This is incredible. Speaking of that, we have a segment at the In Good Company podcast called Fails of the Week.
Sure.
I think with social media, other platforms, it's very easy to just celebrate all these wins, but to actually hear business leaders that still struggle, still have failures, and they're able to overcome those things. What are some of the biggest fails of the week, or maybe over the past couple years, that you're like, oh, this story, gotta tell it. This is one of my biggest fails ever.
Yeah, part of it is just like I laugh, and my partner Mark, if he hears this, will laugh too. Like we got in 2019 where a lot of times in business and in life, go with your gut feeling, right? Like if something seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And so we got dripped on by this lady on LinkedIn who basically had this business model where you paid a flat fee and she would set up meetings for you with business owners for like 401k plans. And we did some vetting and we were like reviewed the contracts and we were like, okay, you know, this seems legitimate. Let's give her a chance. And so we spent a few $1,000s on this. And over the course of like the first 6 months of the engagement, like there was just an excuse every time. And so finally she got us a lead. We called this lead and they had no clue why we were calling, like no clue who we were, no clue what we were talking about. And we just began to get like more and more sketched out by it. Finally, we go to call her to follow up after like 8 months and no leads. And we paid for it and the phones don't work anymore. And we start to try and reach out and we realize that like the business was a bit of a front. I don't know. Like it was a bit of a scam. And so we spent a few $1,000s to learn a valuable lesson. But the other part that I find hilarious about it is just some people just lack shame, if you will. She ends up going to a new company and reaches out to us to do the same exact thing. Like 6 months after we deal with this, she reaches back out and was like, hey, I'm doing the same thing at a new company. Can I get you again? And I just laugh because it's one of those things where like, just trust your gut. Like if it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And it was a humbling experience. We were so excited. Like, there's this thing called the Colby Index, which does a great job of like understanding who people are and how they operate. And Mark and I are such quick starts. And this to me goes back to like the balance in a partnership where Mark and I are just quick start. We're go. We get an idea. We like it. We don't need a ton of convincing. Let's go roll with it. And our partner, Stephanie, is the exact opposite. And she does a great job of like, I feel like from time to time, we're just dogs on a leash and she's trying to rein us back in.
Sure.
It was just one of those things where like, had we taken the time and just done a little more thought, we probably could have saved a few $1,000s, but we're way more cautious from now on. Like when we look at that stuff.
Wow. What a tough story, especially for a marketing agency like me to listen to that story. I'm like,
that's what we're just slower to act now. Like we learned our lesson, right? Like you get got a couple times, you get burned and you just got to stay on top of it.
I think again, not to hijack this, but I think in general, there is this stigma with working with a marketing agency or working with some of these lead generating tactics that does often feel a little bit grimy or slimy, or is this actually going to work? And can you show me a couple of examples where this worked? And back to what we were talking about earlier, I think some of the best marketing you can do is to capture your company culture, to just simply share your story. I say this all the time. People don't know how you can help them unless you tell them.
Sure.
And your online presence is the curb appeal of your business, right? It's your online resume, your digital resume, where people are going to consume your website, your social. They're going to read all this information about you before they actually work with you or call you.
Yeah, and that's where I think the benefit of having a local partner helps.
Yeah.
Where in that case, for example, they were based out of Nevada.
Sure.
And so never even, this is 2019, Zoom wasn't even that big of a thing. So, not even able to have those face-to-face conversations, like I think that's the benefit of having a local partner in that, where you can still have that regional or, digital scope of work, but having somebody who you can meet with face-to-face to hold accountable and stay on track and do all those things certainly makes it an easier decision to work through.
For sure. And I think, I went to an event in New York City a few years back, and they made this statement of a potential customer is 70% through the buyer's journey before they pick up the phone and call you.
Yeah.
So think about, you're buying a car. You're going to go research all these cars. You're going to read reviews. You're going to, figure out all the research elements. And then you're going to go to a dealership, or then you're going to pick up the phone and call someone. And we just live in the information age right now where people want to do that research. When you go to Amazon, you're reading someone's review before you're looking at all these nice, sleek pictures and videos and all that stuff. So again, when I think about the culture you guys have been able to build, talk a little bit about, in this kind of new age with hybrid working and, different days off and different things, how have you guys been able to maintain a really nice company culture where people really enjoy working for you guys and being a part of that team?
Yeah. So this is another thanks to Ken Burke. He introduced us to this book called Traction by a guy named Gino Wickman. And so he introduced us that to us in like the summer of 2021. And prior to that, we had done a bunch of like brand strategy work. So we worked with, a group called Mesh and Movement, who helped us kind of design and build out that whole brand strategy. And through weeks and months of interviews and collaborative sessions, like building out what that is. And that was always something we kept either on like our website when it came to like who we were and what we do, or we agreed to it as partners. But the big thing the book Traction talks about is committing to what your core values are, committing to who you are as a company, committing to what you're not as a company, but then rolling it out and being transparent to it with your staff and with your clients. So if you come into our office, in our waiting room is our core values, where it outlines exactly who we feel we are as an organization. It's in our copy room and mail room. It's throughout our office. Like, it's something we try and live and breathe and do. And I think the biggest thing too, when you're creating that culture, is I feel like business owners want to keep this like cloak, if you will, or separation of like front of the house and back of the house. So what's going on in the business versus what staff knows. We're beyond transparent. So once a quarter, we have what's called a state of the company meeting, where we sit down and we talk through where our revenue is year to date, where our revenue is relative to target, where our assets under management growth is, what our client retention was. Everybody has what we call these rocks. So these are the core things you're responsible for over the next 90 days that help us work towards those 1-year goals. These are all things that are outlined in the book Traction, which I cannot recommend enough for anybody who is either a small business owner or even maybe a C-suite executive at a large company. Like, it just provides this framework that helps you build that within your company. And so there isn't this like cover up or hiding of what's going on. Like, our staff knows exactly where revenue is coming in to target, and they feel bought in because of it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just being transparent. People like transparency.
And I think with, again, this is not, don't take offense to this. I think within this industry, there is kind of this stigma of kind of stuffy, and everybody's sitting in cubicles and just crunching numbers and, looking at all the graphs and the charts. And the moment I met you and talked with your team and just got to know some of your culture, you may be doing the tasks of those things, but your team is incredibly approachable. Even, people tuning into this podcast and hearing you speak, you don't necessarily fit the mold of, I think, what that traditional stigma might represent. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that culture is a little bit different for you guys?
I think part of it is just our hiring practice. Like, when we were very slow to hire, just like, I joked with you earlier, like we're slow to hire marketing agencies. Like we want to make sure it's a good fit. And so, we do multiple rounds where it's somewhat formal, like a phone interview, then an in-person interview. And then we've done it where our staff will take the prospective employee to lunch and just get this feel for who they are.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing for us as we've continued to grow is when we started Rise, we were 5. We're 8. We're soon going to be 9. And when you're a large company and you go hire 5 employees, like you're marginally increasing, or affecting your culture. For us, if we go from 8 to 9, well, that's 13% more people.
Yeah.
Like it's a big thing. I think people sometimes underestimate the impact of bringing on that one additional person when you're a small business.
Yeah.
And so part of it, I think, is our hiring process. Part of it, I think, is we compensate our staff beyond fairly and well. Like there's no better feeling as a business owner than knowing that your staff is appropriately compensated and they're able to do things like buy houses and not have to worry about those things. And that's the other really rewarding part. One of our longtime employees, our first employee, she worked with us going back to 2015 or even 16, like when we were at our previous firm. Her and her husband just bought their first house, and it was your token like young person looking for their first home story over these last couple of years. I think they wrote offers on 20 plus houses, but the joy on her face and just shock when she found out she got it was incredibly validating to all of us. Cause we know that like our work helps produce the revenue that allows her to have that house in her life. And like, that's the thing. And so I think when it starts at the top and when you're bought into your partnership group to who you are and what you want to do and what your values are, it just trickles down from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I've experienced it. So what you're saying is, I've seen it firsthand, which is absolutely incredible what you guys are building. I've got to imagine, especially for people listening that maybe run their own business or they're really grinding it out, man. They're spending a lot of time at work. They're working super hard. What do you do for fun? What do you do in your free time? How important is it for you to take some time for yourself, right? With your family or, on a golf course somewhere, whatever you do. What are some of those hobbies that you have?
Yeah. So I'm a creature of habit. It's just like, I think it's such a token thing, but like if my routine gets out of whack, like I just am not functional. So a lot of it is, repetition during the week. So getting up and getting my girls to where they need to go and getting a workout in before I get to the office. And we're very boring, but during the week, but I feel like that's every parent in their 30s with young kids.
Sure.
Like you get home at 4:30, 5 o'clock, you survive till bath time and then you put them down. But, the weekends it's, I very much enjoy having a consistent golf day with my buddies. So every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, me and my buddies play golf. I'm in a league with them on Thursday nights. And those are my 2 kind of like dad gets away nights that I do for myself. My wife and I try and do like at least monthly, if not bi-monthly, like an overnight somewhere. So whether it's, going to Turning Stone and seeing a comedy show, or we just went up to Canada for our anniversary, about a month ago, like just finding these things to put the effort in, because you have to maintain and cultivate those relationships just as you would anything else. So golf is definitely one of them. I love the Cleveland Browns. My wife and I have had season tickets for 5 years now. So that's one of the things we enjoy doing in the fall. But
so you live in Rochester and you have season tickets to the Cleveland Browns.
It's funny. Growing up, I was a Dolphins fan until I was about 16 or 17. Yeah. So my oldest brother was is a diehard Bills fan. So he's the type of guy, like he has like a Bruce Smith tattoo, like just diehard. And so as any younger brother would do, like I was a bit of a troll. And so I was I'm going to be a Dolphins fan just because you hate them the most. And then I got to be like in college and I see all my buddies who are Bills fans and they're going to, Bills games on the weekends and they're having a blast. And I'm like, I am choosing not to have this in my life just to be a troll to my brother that I have been for the last, 18 years. And so I knew I wanted to find something as different on it, right? Exactly. Yeah, you can't go from being a Dolphins fan to a Bills fan.
Of course.
And so 2014, they had just drafted Johnny Manziel and I was like, I'm in. Bro. And so I became a Browns fan then. And my wife and I for 5 years have had the season tickets. It's a super easy drive, just about 3 hours down, 3 hours back. And I joke, my business partners, Mark and Stephanie, they both have Bills season tickets. And they'll leave their houses in Penfield and Fairport like the same exact time I leave for Cleveland. And when I leave Cleveland, they're leaving Buffalo, but it's so difficult getting out of Orchard Park. Like we get home at the same time.
That is funny.
So do you want to spend time sitting in traffic in Orchard Park where I'm just killing time on 90, getting, through to Erie and stuff like that. So it's been a ton of fun. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see, like, as my kids keep getting older, like how that shifts or what it is. But one of my best friends from college lives in West Virginia, and Cleveland's like the exact midpoint from where he is in West Virginia and where we are in Rochester. And so it's cool because as you get older, I'm sure you can attest to this, like being able to continue those relationships can be a challenge. And so he has them as well. So I know like there's 5 or 6 weekends a year that I'm going to be able to see Jory and his wife, Lindsay, just through the Cleveland Browns. So it's cool. And my wife's a trooper for it. Like, she does 4 games a year-ish and lets me go to 2 without her. And then we sell a couple, but it's a blast.
Yeah. Again, for people that are sports nuts like us, I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan. It's hard to explain the community nature of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you've been to any concert or, some of those moments where you're just looking around the room and everybody is in unison and you're focused on it, it's almost a religious experience.
It is. It's kind of modern day church in a way. For people who don't, practice that. It's kind of what it is.
And again, I think for me, even being a faith guy, there are moments when I see things at a Bills game of, man, you know what? They're actually way more inclusive than even some church people up in here, right? Because there's no real expectations.
You see all walks of life in an NFL stadium. There's no doubt about it.
And hey, just all you got to do is just root for the team, clap when they score a touchdown, and boo when they fumble or throw an interception, and we're good to go. But yeah, I think it's a unique way to see the U.S. as well, right? If you go to some away games and different things to kind of follow a team's journey. We went to Nashville for the Bills-Titans game a few years back. And, we've been to, the Jets games and, different places, which has just been a cool journey to follow. So Bills versus Browns, we'll see. Are we playing this year? I don't even know.
No. So we were supposed to play last year and then there was the snow issue, right? The blizzard got moved to Detroit. Right. So I don't think it's on the calendar for in Buffalo for a couple more years.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to go. My treat, or actually your treat, because
we'll figure it out.
I think you're going to make
depending on
money.
location.
Fair enough. One of our favorite segments as we conclude this podcast today is our rapid fire hot seats.
Okay.
These are 1 to 2 quick response answers. I'm just going to grill you with questions.
Let's do it.
Okay. Are you ready for this? Question 1. Favorite Cleveland Brown of all time?
Joe Thomas.
Love that answer. My last name is Thomas. What's your favorite golf course to play on?
My favorite golf course I've ever played is TPC Scottsdale.
Excellent. Best Browns game you've ever attended?
Best and worst. Best was opening week last year versus the Bengals. They only scored 3 points. I think they had negative yards for the game. That was awesome. The worst game was 2 years ago. They were up 13 at the 2-minute warning versus the Jets, and they lost that game in regulation.
Oof.
That was unbelievably heartbreaking. So a little bit of both.
Wow. Favorite club in your golf bag?
Sevenwood. Easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about it? What's your golf brand? Like what's your
right now I play a lot of Strixon.
Okay, wonderful. Pre-game ritual for watching the Browns.
It's consistent whether we are at a game or at home watching a game. I have a souvenir cup from the stadium. I fill it with Diet Dr. Pepper and eat full shelled peanuts. My buddy Kenny and I started doing this a few years ago. And it's become a tradition. I have just a Rolodex of photos to him on Browns game day of Diet Dr. Peppers and peanuts.
Wow.
It's odd, but that's what it is.
Wow. Favorite post-golf or mid-golf meal?
White hot.
White hot.
Easy.
Wow.
Mayo, mustard, onions.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's like, it just goes hand in hand with golf. You got to have a dog.
Yeah. And red or white, I prefer the white, but you have a hot dog. Mayo on the hot dog is a must. I will say that if you haven't done it, you have to do it.
Wow. Well, you heard it here first. Well, Zach, thanks for being on, man. This is awesome. And again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to come and participate with us, just to hear a little bit about Zach's story. And again, we believe that the best parts in business happen in good company. Thanks so much.